Hello, I'm Mike Lynn. I am the corporate metrologist here at IndySoft, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the significant out of tolerance flag and how to use it. Typically, this is used in cases where you have a customer that says, okay, I need to know when something is way, way, way out of tolerance. And they've given you, say, some percentage of the value, say 150% of the tolerance. So if it goes beyond that, then that's considered significant, and we may have to do special things. If it's just barely out of tolerance, that's one thing, but if it was significantly out, then we need to know about it. So the way you set that up is you come into your setup grid, and what you're going to want to do is customize the columns and drag in the significant out of tolerance, SOOT is what that field is called. And then you've got the tolerance minus warning and tolerance plus warnings. So you want to drag those in as well. You may notice here that I have values already in here. So instead of wasting your time watching me type in a bunch of stuff, I've already pre-populated this. And we set our tolerances at 150% of our normal tolerance over here. So this is where it's going to trigger. If it's outside of these values, it's going to trigger that significant out of tolerance flag. So this is our setup grid. So let me go ahead and save that. And we'll call this basic with SOOT. Say OK. And then we want to go to our results grid, which is what the technicians are going to see. And we're going to want to bring that significant out of tolerance flag. It doesn't have to be here, but it's nice to have, for the technicians to be able to see it if they need to notify somebody immediately. So we'll adjust that a little bit. And they don't really need to see the values there, but they need to see that flag when it occurs. So we'll go ahead and save here. Basic with SOT. So now we've got our results grid, which will show up in the events, and then we have the setup grid, which allows you as the administrator to go in and make all these changes to your tolerances and all. So when we run this calibration, and we'll just jump through these first sets of screens here. So let's say first reading is perfect, and as you would expect, everything just goes through just fine. So now let's say we have a failure and 100.5, and we have a failure here, so it turns red like you would expect. Now let's say we have a significant out of tolerance, so it's outside of the 150% that you've predetermined. So if you'll notice here, not only do we have the failure, but we also had this flag as a significant out of tolerance, which means it was outside of those tolerance bands that you set for that trigger. Now, one thing you can do would be to, in your certificate templates, use the SOT checkbox to put a check next to any of the line items that were significantly out of tolerance. Now, another thing that you can do is, let's say you're running a lab and you don't necessarily have to notify your customer about significant out of tolerances, but let's say that you have a policy in your lab for optimization of test points. So if you have a policy of say 70 or 75% of the tolerance, then you're going to want to adjust it back to nominal or optimize it. When I worked in the last lab I worked in, our adjustment policy was 75%. So if we had any measurements, even though it was in tolerance, if it exceeded 75% of the tolerance, our policy was to adjust it back to nominal as best we could. Trying to do that in your head a lot of times, especially when you're in a production environment, can be rather taxing and rather difficult, and a lot of times it might not happen. So what we can do is we can use the significant out of tolerance flag to do the same thing as the out of tolerance, but we tighten those values down so that it now becomes an optimization flag. So what we're going to want to do with this is in our setup grid, what we'll do is we'll just change the names, and we'll call this optimize, or OPT for short. And then for our tolerances, do the same thing here. Optimization minus tolerance. And optimization plus tolerance. I like to try to keep the names short so I don't have to open them up so much to see what they are. So we'll save this grid as basic with OPT, and then again we want to change this display here, change that field name to OPT. Now if you notice, I don't know if you did notice, but back here, let me change to another piece of equipment here that I've already got set up. So since I've saved those, I can just go grab the name. Basic with opt is what we saved it as. So it's brought these back in. Now, as you can see, I've pre-populated some of these test points here for this DMM with our 75% of the tolerances that are over here. So it's the same concept as the out tolerance, but we're tightening those tolerances in to trigger a flag for optimization. And we'll change over to the results grid and change it to the basic with I must not have saved it properly here. That's easy enough. Oops. Basic with SOT. Let's try it again. Let's try saving this. Start changing the name. And we'll change that to OPT. And then save it. There we go. So now when we run this calibration, oops, I forgot this one has different test points. Next, we'll jump through these uncertainties. So as you can see, we've got the normal calibration, but we now have this optimization flag that shows up here. So let's say 321.7. That was an out of tolerance and it showed that optimization flag or adjustment flag. It depending on how you want to call it, optimization or adjustment. 9.043. So that was an intolerance, but it exceeded the 75% mark and shows us that adjustment or optimization flag. So that's an easy way for your technicians to know, hey, I need to adjust this line. Even though it's intolerance, I need to optimize it back down to nominal. And this really comes into account when our laboratory is trying to do set intervals and maintain intolerance reliabilities over time. If you're not adjusting back to nominal, the next time this comes in, this might be out of tolerance if it was borderline. So whenever you can, you should be adjusting back into the nominal as close as you can get. But again, this is a quick, easy way to show technicians how to use the optimization, how to set that up, and also using the same concepts can be used for the significant out of tolerance. So I hope this helps, and we'll see you next time.